depending on how many men as clients. Weekends were always busier, of course.
So you're saying 20 minutes for a job, or?
Yeah, $20, 20 minutes. Depending on the age of the guy, he could probably go for a long time, and so the price would go up. I mean, that's why they had timers in every room. Yeah, once those boots were off, bada bing, bada boom, you had a timer, just in case you got lost in the moment, if you know what I mean.
But they worked like a 2-hour shift, or they worked like a
I don't know.
9-hour shift?
I don't know, but they did rotate. They had to have rotated. Yeah, they had to have rotated. And they would have had to change the sheets. But in those earlier days, it was half price for dirty sheets.
Yes.
Full price for clean sheets, yeah. And you couldn't sleep overnight in those beds. No way. It was,
And this is also, I guess,
these are good questions, though.
Sort of personal question.
Yeah.
Because a female can't do that very often.
Right.
What did they?
Did they take two?
They didn't use Vaseline. They used some sort of, but they used like lubricant because the women weren't going to stay.
Right. So, you mean during the menstrual cycle? No. Well,
regular.
they would have that week off, I think. They would have a week off. Especially, I heard, they would work 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And some of these, the last 4 brothels standing, they would share some of the sex workers. They would share some of them. Yeah. And so if the gals wanted more hours,
Wow.
But during the summertime and of course tourist season, they had way more workers, of course, and then they'd have their staples year round. But
And then they basically serviced and went out there and picked up another job and brought them back.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Wow.
They would. Yep. And so let's say 4 gals. Let's say there's 5 gals working on a slow night, and on a busy night there'd probably be 20 or 15, depending. Yeah. Yep. And they. Of course, let's say she doesn't get chosen a lot. So, I guess it just depends on whoever gets picked a lot. So you wanted to get picked a lot,
Wow.
And make that, and it was 50%. You get 50% of the cut.
That was another question.
We're going to talk more about that in the madam's office. It's very fascinating. Okay. Yeah. Let's go across the hallway. This probably would have been a workroom, but we curated this to be, a pleasure menu. By the way, we didn't have pleasure menus in the latter days, but in those earlier days, like the 1800s, they did have pleasure menus, and they were naughty. They were XXX, and they'd have them on their walls, and they'd have a brochure, and they were just explicit, so pornographic. But after a while, they stopped doing that because it was so pornographic. But this we just had for fun, but they didn't have a pleasure menu up. But in those early days, they would have the pleasure menu, and they'd have the price right then and there. Yeah, it's crazy. Go ahead and go on in here. And this probably would have been a workroom, but we curated it to represent on-site bedroom. And this is just to remind us that these gals were more than just sex workers. They had goals and dreams and aspirations just like you and I. They were somebody's mother, daughter, girlfriend, wife, sister. Aren't those great beds, by the way? Anyway, not all of these gals came from bad circumstances. Some of these women just knew that these madams ran good businesses up here, and you made a lot of money working for them. And one of these gals was from California. She'd come up here every summer in the 70s, call herself Smokey, go on back to UCLA and pay for her tuition right up front in the 70s. But on the other end of the spectrum there were many sad stories. And one of them was Nita. And she came here in 1972. But her story is at the age of 26. But her story is this: at the age of 11, down in Texas, Big Ed, her stepfather, starts forcing her to have sex with him at the age of 11 in the same bed that she slept with her mother. He slept with her mother. Her mother would pretend to be asleep, and she'd say to Nita, "You tell nothing to nobody." And then at the age of 12, they pull Nita out of school, taking away her education and her self-esteem. And then at the age of 14, Nita has her first child by Big Ed, not by choice. By the way, they're carnies, they're con artists, and they force Nita to run the carnival unit with them. Yeah, and at the age of 14, she has her first child by Big Ed, not by choice. 2 years later, another child by Big Ed, not by choice. At the age of 16, her mother forces her to turn her first trick at the back of a drive-in movie theater, in Texas, and at that moment, but her own mother forced her. And at that moment, Nita realized she could make a lot of money and get out from under their horrible grasp and raise her 2 little boys whom she dearly loved. But at the same time, she didn't think she was worth anything else. The life that she had lived, they had groomed her to be a sex worker, basically. And so for the next 10 years, from the age of 16 to 26, she's a prostitute. After 4 failed marriages, in 1972, she comes up here and she works for the madams up here. She hears about how good the business is. And she worked for 3 of the 4 brothels. She lives off site with her 2 little boys, and she said this of all the madams and the gals: it was her first experience of any type of family ever.
Wow.
Yeah. She said that she could be a good con artist and work her way out of almost all the difficult stuff, and sometimes entirely out of the sex itself. And they'd still come back for more. Yeah, because she was a good con artist, and she said she could be an actress. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. Anyway, we were able to find her because she used her real name. A lot of these sex workers didn't use their real names, like Smokey. We rarely can find any of these gals. But this gal we were able to get a hold of, and she gave us a lot of information of the 70s. And we opened up in August 1st, 2020. But she was going to come up here and see what she was a part of in the museum and come back to her old stomping grounds. But she passed away from COVID, and at the age of 75. That's so young. The older I get, the younger that sounds. Yeah, unfortunately. So it's kind of sad. I would have liked to have met her.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Quite a few people like your Smokey would do this to pay off schooling.
Yeah, and yes.
Which is why she didn't want to give her name, because she's probably married to some prominent guy.
They're just regular people. Their prostitution is not really something that they would normally do, but if they want to make good money in a short amount of time, you used an alias. And that's why it's so hard to track down any of these ladies. Yeah, and even the madams, like Tommy Cox, who was the madam of the Beige Door, that's not her real name. She made that up.
Wow.
Yeah, and Pam Holiday, that's not her real name, but we do have all their information. We have their. Mm-hmm.
They're just survivor.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well,
These used to be skylights, windows on the ceiling, and the little boys of Deadwood would crawl up on the rooftops and get their little birds and bees. Yeah, their little peep show. What a great time to be a little boy. $60 a year, and you get a little peekaboo. What? Okay, let's go into the madam's office. Follow me. Oh shoot, it's already 10:02.